Essential simplicity.
Good evening. My name is Bob Bendykowski, and I'm here to talk about the essential simplicity of healing. No, there was a time when healers walked around, the mystery schools were active, and healing was very, very popular. And then after a few hundred years, those things started to die out. With the result, now we have turned to materialism, where we think we can heal people by sticking pills in them and cutting them up and so on and so forth. But actually, healing is quite simple if you are on the path of the healer. Now, if you are on the path of a composer or an engineer and you try healing, you may not be very successful because these paths are laid out. I did want to start with a couple. Well, anyway, this process has taken me only about 40 years. So I have covered quite a bit of ground, and most of it by intuitive research. I do like to use hints, though. So I printed out some of my favorite hints, which I'm not going to use here, but for example, the hint says, healing, for instance, will one day be performed by carefully trained priests who will summon and direct angelic forces to repair human bodies instead of using medicines or surgery. That is a quote from Working with Angels by Lightman and Bendykowski. Another one which I like is this: there is only one true way of doing anything, and that is knowing exactly what it is we want to do and knowing exactly why we want to do it. All other doing is blundering. Now, the biggest problem is nobody ever investigated the process of healing, and that's one of the things we're going to do today. And then another one, Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So what the healers have been doing through the centuries, the successful ones, is essentially a form of technology which appears to be magic, but they do it with the help of the angelic host, you might say. And finally, from Dr. Master Shah, probably the greatest healer alive today, a human being has two lives, physical life and soul life. Physical life is limited, soul life is eternal. So those are some of the hints which got me started. So let's pass out these sheets and we will go through this. Let me see here. Oh, here, just two for you. And we'll send two this way. I think there's two there. All right. The two big quotes which have taken me on my way from the very beginning is one from the Bible. The quote from Christ, I could not find the exact quote, but it boils down to ask and you shall receive. He said something to the effect, if you stay with me, you will receive anything you ask for, something like that. The other quote is from Hermes, as above, so below, but they never mention the second half of the quote, as below, so above. So that tells us that this is the physical plane. The spiritual plane where the angels live is a model for the physical and vice versa. So on earth here, of course, there's a lot of screw-ups. Things go wrong, and there's a lot of things have to be fixed. And it turns out from my investigation that the same thing happens on the angelic plane. Everything is not perfect. There's messing around with that, and it just... Now, of course, with how many billion people are on Earth, there's a lot of paperwork that gets lost, misplaced, and it's a matter of record keeping. Anyway, this little sheet is titled A Human Entity, and it's been developed over the past, I say about 10 years ago I started this. And it is the human entity in capsule form. Now, most people don't realize that the human entity is a composite of two things. It is a soul, and which is known here as the protege, and the vehicle which the soul moves through the incarnation. So the vehicle we move through, with the thing that walks and talks, is not the soul, but the soul inhabits it. And if it's a protege, it must have a mentor. And so in the astral plane, we'll call it the astral plane for want of a better name, there are ascended beings who mentor the soul on earth. All right, so first of all, what happens in the course of incarnation? Well, we have souls who are on their various paths and whatnot, and they end an incarnation, and they get debriefed as to what went on during that incarnation. And then they take a rest period, and then they are put back into the line to come back down for another round on Earth using a human vehicle. So they spend some time with a mentor, maybe more than one mentors, and they decide what kind of goals should be in that life form. Now, if it's a new soul, the goals are usually pretty simple, but if it's an advanced soul, he may end up as a high-placed person on the earthly plane. So the goals are decided upon, and this becomes the soul's life plan. Okay, so when it's time for the soul to come down to earth, of course he has to have something to get into, and they decide, well, let's decide if it's going to be male or female, and let's decide what body form it's going to have, and in order to make good use of it to get the goals going. And so when that is decided, the soul's the baby starts to form using the mother's energy to take shape. And after about 7 months, the soul says, aha, my vehicle is almost ready, I better go down and see what's going on. See? So he goes down and he fits himself into the vehicle in the mother, and that's when the vehicle starts to kick. That is where life starts to enter the vehicle. Now, then when it's time for the baby to be born, of course, the soul, I guess, and his mentor decide when that time comes, and so he kicks pretty hard, and then he says, I'm getting out of here. And so at that point in time, the soul is a separate unity within the human vehicle. All right, now, when this happens, the soul undergoes a mandatory amnesia. In other words, he forgets everything that went on. And so he arrives on earth as a blank canvas, so to speak. It's not quite the way to put it, but he doesn't remember anything. So, but he still has his mentor up, living in the sun in the astral plane, and who tries to guide him. It's like in the university where you have guidance counselors. The mentor is up there, tries to guide him, but there's a problem there because the mentor, number one, cannot read the soul's mind once it's separate down on earth. It is not able to mind read what's going on. And number two, the mentor can only guide the soul by intuitive hints stuck in his head. In other words, gut feelings, intuition, whatever you want to call it. That's how the soul is guided along his or her path. Also, the spirit beings, the mentor and the soul, live off of what might be called cosmic life energy. Now, I think the technical term, the technical theosophical term is Atman. And that is the energy which sustains spiritual beings. Now, when the baby is forming, the mother's Atman supplies any life it needs. And once the baby is out, the soul is present. The soul provides the Atman, or the life, for the baby all throughout the rest of the baby's existence. And when the time to die, of course, we can only tell the person is dead. Well, it's hard to tell nowadays when a person is dead, because some say, okay, no heartbeat, no pulse, no nothing, that person is dead. And others says, well, no brain activity, that person is dead. But the real time when the person is dead, when the vehicle is dead, is when the Atman, the energy, has been completely withdrawn, never to return. So we can keep a cadaver functioning with machinery, but if the Atman is gone, you could do that forever, and the person is not really alive. So, okay. Also, of course, then, because the Atman, because the new person, the no human entity, has this mandatory amnesia, he or she forgets that he had a mentor on the higher planes. So he's sort of stranded down here and has to find his own way, which is a lot more than, for example, if he came into being knowing what he was supposed to do. Because that would be like playing poker, knowing what everybody's have in their hands. See, that would be a very, very dull game then. So here the baby comes down, and what is on this list is the atmic entity, or protege, is a diagram of its vehicle and how it operates. Now, some of this stuff could not have been, book could not have been written 50 years ago, because it required the development of the computer to give us some ideas, and electronics in general. So when the baby is forming, the baby is equipped with, of course, the intelligence, the knowledge of how to build it. All right. So the subconscious circuit board is one of the circuit boards in there. Now, you're all familiar with the circuit board, what it is, what it does. Okay. And there are four on the subconscious circuit board. There are four memory units, or we call them chips, integrated circuits, whatever you want to call them, you know. And these four are primarily memories. The history goes back 5 incarnations. It carries the important facts from 5 incarnations. And when the current incarnation ends, that material goes into the history area, and one of the oldest history memory goes into the Book of Life, which is somewhere in the galaxy. All right. The next chip is the directions for this life plan. Karma, which is the learning procedure, and the life plan are in there, plus whatever memories are needed. Genetic will give you the qualities inherited from the previous lives, as far as genetics go. And finally, core stores the entire life, the present life. So all your memories from the current incarnation are stored in core until the incarnation ends, and that shifts upward. And that's something I've been thinking about, because in incarnations on Earth, we have people now going through memory loss and whatnot, Alzheimer's disease. So somehow they have lost their connection to the core chip on the subconscious circuit board. All right, the next thing down is the etheric circuit board. Now, the etheric circuit board has a bunch of chips on it. There's a chip for each physical system. There's a chip for the cardio system, there's a chip for the digestive system, and so on and so forth. And then there's also chips which cause the construction of the energy systems, which come a little bit later here. And I think that, and of course, then, well, okay. And this material from the subconscious circuit board and from the etheric circuit board is fed into the DNA. And the DNA then is the magical place which creates the physical body by condensing energies according to that. We'll get back to that in a second. Now, one of the things they do, there are 3 energy fields: the mental matrix, the emotional matrix, and the etheric matrix. Now, the mental matrix is a higher frequency, the emotional matrix next down, and the etheric matrix is the instructions to build the actual physical body. The thing about it, they are not layers. A Greek homeopath named George Vitulkas has a book out, and he treats them with a diagram where they're interconnecting cylinders. Well, that's somewhat true. But essentially, if you poke yourself, you are poking the mental matrix, the emotional matrix, and the etheric matrix. These are energetic fields, but it's like a cake. The materials are all blended together. Okay, so the thing about this, you can worry yourself sick, or you can think yourself sick by overdoing the mental and emotional aspects of this. And that will change the etheric matrix. Next is the spinal cord, which is just a big connecting nerve, which spreads out a lot of these signals all over the place. Then the energy systems, these have been well examined by Theosophy and Rosicrucian. The major chakras, the minor chakras, the spleen chakra, the nervous system and natus, the meridian system and natus, and the aura. These are all constructed from chips back on the etheric circuit board. Now, you will notice the next thing down is the vehicle's physical systems. The vehicle's physical systems are the end product of all this that came before. Consider this diagram a flow chart. All right? The soul comes in and he brings in the Atman, the cosmic life force, and the Atman flows through the subconscious circuit board, through all these chips, through the etheric circuit board, and it hits the DNA, and from that point on, the physical body is constructed. But it's like a little river. If you have a rock in the middle of the river, the river won't flow smoothly. And if other things are in the river, blockages, we will have a river which is not smooth. But the DNA doesn't know what's good and what's bad. It does whatever goes into it to make the body. So what happens is, in our current medical system, we work at the bottom of the page, the vehicle's physical systems. And we try and repair those because that's where the problems show up. So a glitch up in the history, cell memories, or something else, or even memories from early childhood, things. And of course there are always the possibility of really the material, the circuit board, and these things are being defective. Anything below the protege on this here, all these circuit boards, anything will age, will be defective, and in fact may have factory defects in it. It's hard to say, but you can't think of these energetic things as being manufactured, but they really are. So, okay. So problems in the vehicle's physical systems, such as symptoms, are invariably, I shouldn't say invariably, but almost always problems caused by faults in the energy flow from the subconscious circuit board down to the DNA. And the DNA makes the physical body without judgment. It doesn't say, well, this is not right. It just follows the directions that come in there. And it alters the Atman flow, the cosmic energy flow, and it produces a physical body which is formed, you might say, above it on the two circuit boards. And then way at the bottom we have extrinsic. We always have to watch out for extrinsic things. Now these are things from outside of the body, of the vehicle, which attack it. So for example, you can have a trauma, break an arm or do something like that. This of course is not a bad thing nowadays. It's a bad thing, but it's something that you can handle. But of course if the trauma is too bad, then the soul says, I got to get out of here, this thing isn't working anymore. My vehicle has crashed. And it's no good anymore, and the soul leaves if it's such a bad trauma. And then there are, of course, you know, things like things you eat and drink. If you ingest a poisonous material, that of course will kill you too, depending on how poisonous it is. And of course there are things that you can't see which attack you. There is a world of entities which surround us, some of which may cause problems. So it's a very complicated system, and the only thing I can say is the best way to heal something in the vehicle's physical systems is to clear the glitches from the energy flow before it hits the DNA. So if we can clear up that intelligence in the circuit boards, then we have a very good chance of healing whatever is detrimentally affecting the vehicle's physical systems. So most of our diseases, as you call them right now, are primarily due to environmental concerns. But that usually magnifies problems that are already here. So anyway, so the idea behind healing then is to clear the intelligence. So the human vehicle is built on a three-step thing. It's intelligence, the information, which then creates a structure, and then the structure allows it to function. Obviously, if there were no structure, it couldn't function. So that is a basic idea behind the last 20 years of my research into this. Do we have any questions about this?
So have you been able to heal yourself?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But see, you know, I'm a strange case, because I work alone, and of course I have my family not around me now, they're all spread out, but they at least I make contact with. But it's very difficult to get feedback when someone doing this healing, so I have to depend on repairing myself. And I'm still not through yet. There are still a couple of things to be done. So what I do in this case is, if I've got a problem that is not resolving, I sit and work it out by going down the line. So we have to assume that the soul or protege is in reasonably good shape, let's hope so. So I say, is the source of this problem in the subconscious circuit board? If yes, then I go down and pick out which chip it's on, and then I correct it. Now, for example, I have deleted karma and life plan stuff from my circuit board. So, but there's still a couple of things I want to straighten out a bit. Let's put it this way: I'm never going to try out for the Olympics. I think that's very doubtful. But at least.
Wait, why did you delete
What?
memory, karma, and life plan?
I didn't delete everything on there, but you know, I have essentially completed my life plan, and this is one of the faults in the current system. Let's take karma for example. Okay, let us say in a previous life you build up some negative karma, and So you decide before you come down to earth, this would be a good time to get rid of that karma. See? So in this, let's get in the case of this, the karma. Okay, you can get rid of the karma by being sick with this particular disease condition for 2 years. All right. So okay, that sounds good. So you go down, you get to be maybe 30, 40 years old, and you're stricken by this disease, which is caused by the karma, the learning process of karma. And the 2 years are up. Unfortunately, the karma is not automatically deleted. What's in the chip, the directions in the chip. So you live the rest of your life with this disease condition because the current design of the human entity, the vehicle, has faults in it. And these faults are not going to be completely resolved until what is called the 7th root race. That's supposed to be the point of perfection.
But you deleted it because of your age.
I deleted whatever was causing the problem. And the same thing with life plan. Well, I've lived out my life plan pretty much. I think it's over. But if the directions still call for things to happen to me, and it's part of the life plan, I just deleted some life plan a couple of days ago. You know, that was, and it's, you know, this is really quite amorphous. It's not something you can lay your hands on. I have to get my information by talking to my mentor, not physically, but but see, these things just don't get automatically. Well, it's paperwork. I said before, with how many billion people on Earth, the astral beings, the spiritual beings who handle this job, I think are just swamped. You know.
What a thing to say.
Well, yeah. Like I said, the things get screwed up on that level too.
As below, so above.
Yeah, as below, so above.
We're swamped, they're swamped.
Yeah.
That's a hot mess.
I honestly, what you're describing though, I think I respect, because there's an element of time that you're talking about within what's feasible.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people who talk about healing talk about things that are beyond physical normalcy. You know, they're super normal. And really what's more useful is what's metaphysically possible.
Yeah, yeah.
And so so I really think that adds a great dimension to what you're talking about.
Oh, we're nowhere near being through.
Like, you know, healing someone who's a teenager is different than someone who's in the prime of their life, and what is physically doable. And I know it's kind of annoying to me to hear people talk about impossible, you know, magnificent, complete turnarounds, complete healing, you know, like returning from the age of 60 to the age of 14. And that's, to me, kind of bogus.
It never happens.
It rarely does, you know, and that would be super normal, supernatural.
Yeah. Of course, now, from reading near-death experience reports and other things from Sylvia Brown, when you go back after an incarnation, everybody that you meet there is approximately 30 years old, even if the person died when he was 15. You know, because that seems to be the age of excellence for the. Anyway, also you have to keep in mind that what we live in is our vehicle. Now, a few months ago we were talking, Kathleen, about the chariot.
Yeah.
Remember the chariot? You get in the chariot and you ride it and whatnot. Yeah. Well, today the vehicle of choice is the automobile. So when we come down to Earth, we have an automobile ready for us. It's a weird automobile because it's like this and keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But, you know, it's not as... But see, if you were to drive your car around and smash it up and total it out, you'd say, oh heck, I got to get a new car. Well, that's essentially what happens in the process of incarnation. The vehicle you are living in the human vehicle wears out, whatnot, you take a break from it and you get a new vehicle and come down again until you have completed, you know. So, and I've never felt that death was anything that important. I'm sort of like Archie Bunker, you know. I'm sorry the guy died, but that's life.
That's a true statement, right?
So, but you know, I mean, I've had my mother died, my father died, and my brother died, and it was sort of sad, but I didn't get all grief-stricken because it seemed to be the natural way things go.
Yeah, we're the same way in my family.
You know, so I mean,
It's a moment of, it can be a moment of joy, actually, because the person has finished this particular task and is moving on.
And there's no more suffering in their life.
Right.
I sorry, this is a little aside for me. I have this person that have this feeling that grief is almost a very selfish emotion.
That's right.
You know,
It could be selfish, right?
You know, you think about the reasons that you're sad is because that person is no longer going to be.
You're gonna miss that person. You're thinking of yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've always thought of my vehicle not as a vehicle, as a car. I like at the feet of the master. It's my horse. And I have to take good care of that horse. You see what I'm saying? Feed it, keep it, brush it, clean it off. But I'm here to use it.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, let's go a step further. You ask, how did I get all this information? Well, the secret word is dowsing. Now, dowsing is using some kind of an instrument to indicate, well, you can only do yes and no answers with dowsing. And so I'm always on the lookout. So a number of months back, I was on the dowsing, the pendulum thing, and I found they had to offer a black healer pendulum. And they had one left. I think they build these one at a time. It's built according to some directions from some, I don't know exactly how, I lost a little piece of paper it says. But I decided I'd like to have this pendulum, and I was able to obtain it for the modest cost of $50. You know, that's what the heck. But it's one of a kind. There's probably about maybe a half a dozen or more, a dozen of these in the world. And the thing about dowsing, and I've got some sheets here from the American Society of Dowsers, and the they admit they don't know how it works, how dowsing works. But it's actually quite simple. Now you'll remember that every person has a mentor who is guiding him up in the astral plane, the sun, wherever. And the mentor, like I says, he can give you hints, but he can't read your mind. But mentors can apprehend or comprehend sound and sight. So there's a problem to overcome. People don't realize they have a mentor, and they try and think they can think something to the mentor, but they can't. They have to speak out loud. So when you are dowsing, you are actually speaking out loud. You contact your mentor. We'll get into that a little bit later. And the mentor is part of what they call the Huna great company of high selves, which are all the angels, all the ascended masters, everything who are working here on Project Earth. And so essentially, if you become a good dowser, then you have access to all the information in the solar system, because these are the people who built the solar system. Now, I'm going to do this as a try here. I usually work at home in the quiet, but let's have a yes sign. You know, let's give you a line to work on here. A yes is a line like this. Okay? Now turn that into a no sign. Now circle clockwise. I could turn it around, but you get the idea. You program it for a yes, no, and maybe, let's say. And with that, you can take a line of things, like I say now, okay, this person is suffering from liver cancer. Is the root of that liver cancer to be found on the subconscious circuit board? Yes, okay. Is it to be found in the history? No. In karma? No. In lineage? No. And so on. Then you go down till you find where this liver cancer disrupted the flow of energy going to the DNA. And then you correct that point by deleting or repairing it or whatnot. This, using the pendulum, contacts you with your mentor and everybody else who is up there working on Project Earth. But you have to do it out loud, because the mentor cannot read your mind. And of course you have to do it in private so they don't arrest you and take you on. It's not a good idea to be arrested. So anyway, I have a couple of other pendulums at home, but this is turning out to be my favorite, although I'm not really fond of metal cords to it. Okay, so all right, so we know then how the human vehicle is constructed and how it works. Now if you turn that page over, you will see what I call the solar components, and I think I passed these out before. All right, this is what the human vehicles are built from. And if you read my preceding copies of my book, which is finally coming to fruition, let me see if I can find what I want here real quick. I don't even, I should have marked this, I guess. Creation of Earth. We're getting close. I guess I'm not going to find it. But it is a little story about a fish who goes to the queen fish, and the fish says, queen fish, oh, here it is, okay. Inaya Khan tells a Hindu story of a fish who went to a queen and asked, I have always heard about the sea, but what is the sea? Where is it? The queen fish explained, you live, move, and have your being in the sea. The sea is within you and without you, and you are made of the sea, and you will end in the sea. The sea surrounds you as your own being. Now, the same can be said of the atmosphere we live in, the environment. The first thing that came to mind is many years ago, as I thought, well, how can 7 colors in the rainbow add up to white light? You know, you take a prism and refract it, or that's why one of the things of the rainbow is in the subtitle. How can that end up being white light? And I figured there must be more than just light and colors. So this is a layout of what is used to build every living thing on Earth. Now, there are 7 programs listed. Patanjali, I think, was the one who discerned 5 of these programs. These are instruction sets. All right? In his Patanjali's favorite, the famous book, the one you use for furthering your knowledge of what, and then he found 5 of them, and I first located this in book on radionics, but there's a total of 7. There's these programs. This intelligence is riding on the colors, and the ethers are 4 things. These are the basic air, earth, fire, and water, which the ancients said were the 4 things that made up Earth, and to some extent they are true. And then the energies which come out of the sun, chi, fohat, Da'ed, Klimi, and Kundalini. Now Chi we're familiar with from Eastern Qigong and things like that. Fohad and Kundalini we've had some familiarity with. Da'ed is the energy which helps to rapidly dematerialize dead things. It does other things besides that. And Klimi, I haven't quite figured out everything it does, but that's one there. So these things then come into different combinations according to the programming. Prana, of course, is the most prominent one. That's the one you hear about. And in many cases, they say prana is an energy. It really isn't. It is a computer program. And so, and then I think there's two more programs, one for plants and one for animals, which we are not necessarily interested in right now. I think there are, but I haven't investigated that. So these elements here are the ones that build us. All right? You live, what is the atmosphere? You live in the atmosphere. You are made of the atmosphere, and so on and so forth. These are these elements. So a part of the healing process is to use these elements to repair the vehicles. As the vehicles age, things wear out and whatnot. And you can read all about the what they do that I found out so far. See, there are maybe more. But it doesn't have it here. But it's in the book. But this thing that now, you notice, I don't know if you heard the news reports that there have been outbreaks of measles and mumps and whatnot. And I'm saying, I wish these people would realize it, because the childhood diseases are in these programs. I think primarily in the Upana program. So they're going to be with us as long as the sun shines. And so as a result, they're going to be, they are there to train the child's immune system, to gradually build it up. And if you treat them as serious diseases are bad, because if the children's immune systems are not built up, then they're going to start to deteriorate. The vehicles are going to start to deteriorate earlier. And so we have lots of children developing cancer at an early age. Why? Because we've had 4 generations where their immune systems have been messed with and, discombobulated and all that. So anyway, what happens is the healer contacts his mentor with a request for healing. Ask and you shall receive. And the mentor is contacted with all the spirit doctors and everything else, and the spirit doctors proceed out and apply prescriptions made up of concentrated solar components. So if your prana program is wearing out because you're getting older, you get a dose of prana in there. And that program starts to run the machine better. So, and this is what happened when Christ walked around on earth. When Christ was walking around, he covered 800 people approximately. He did 800 treatments in the course of 3 years. But he didn't have cars or jet planes. He had to travel from town to town to do this. And so in my book I say, if Christ were responsible for all these complete healings, it really would have been magic. And even the Bible gives the impression that these healings were done practically instantaneously. Well, it doesn't work that way. It takes time for the energies and information to filter through the DNA and so on, but that can even be speeded up. There are ways to speed that up, which I found out. So what happens is Christ walked around, he hit a village, and he started the healing for people who were requesting it. And sometimes they wanted to demonstrate how it could be done, so the healing was speeded up. Or He just says, you are healed, you know, your faith is made whole, whatever he did. And he went on, and as soon as the person was introduced to the spirit doctor corps, the spirit doctors continued the healing process after Christ left. And as time went by, of course, word caught up with him that, oh boy, he healed 50 people. You know, I mean, they not all miraculous, but they did get healed. So that is the process. To heal, you have to rebuild the intelligence section of the vehicle. And nowadays you might say, you're driving down the street, you know, and something goes wrong and whatnot. What do? They hook a little device to your computer, which runs the cars nowadays, right? Right? Yes, yes. There's a computer in your car which runs everything. And it gives out readings of what went bad and so on and so forth. And they read this then, and then they say this we fix up, see? So the same thing here. These are computer-like programs and energies and whatnot. So that's what the spirit doctors use to heal people. Now, have you any questions about that? Okay. So what has happened through the last 2 centuries? Well, materialism, and of all the books that I have on healing, and there's a pretty good stack of them, written by healers, there's only one other person, and that was the guy in England, his name escapes me right now, who says he depended on 2 spirit doctors to do his healing work. And otherwise, the healers come out and they say, well, you do this or you do this and whatnot. And the healers are successful because they have the gift. They are able to make contact. It is their path that they are following. And so they are successful. But to train somebody from being an apprentice healer to make them a master healer, he has to be on the path, but he has to get more information. So what happens then is I'm trying to arrange this as a teaching, as a syllabus, you might say. And part of it is learning how we're put together in the first place, where the energy comes from. It's all in the sun. So the idea of the essential simplicity of healing, this is the almost perfect chapter 7, the one that I have spent much more time on because it was aimed at sort of beginners, so to speak. And so I know there's one gal who I wish she had showed up today, and she was interested in the actual healing process. So, but she didn't show up today, but maybe we'll get her a copy of the book anyway. So this will get, you take these home, but if you ever want to get started healing, you have to be somewhat dedicated. And it is very similar to learning to play a musical instrument. You have to spend a certain amount of time every day. You have to practice your dowsing, and you won't really make much progress, much rapid progress, if you don't develop a familiarity with your mentor, the person who runs the dowsing pendulum. Okay, we're not going to read through all of this. We'll just pick out things and we'll talk about them. On this first page, page 28, the basic treatment procedure. Quiet thought activity as in meditation. Now, what this boils down to is what I call the mental energy spectrum. Now, there is an electromagnetic spectrum. It goes from, 1 hertz or half a hertz or whatever, and it goes up to gigahertz and whatnot. It's quite a thing. And the rule in that electromagnetic spectrum is that the longer or the slower the frequency, the longer the wavelength. So if you put out an electric pulse once a second, it'll travel really far. I mean, it moves through the ionosphere or whatever, and it'll travel really far. And then if your pulses are very close together, they don't have very far to move. So the idea here is when you quiet your mind as in meditation, you are lengthening the mental energy wavelength. It's not exactly the same as the electromagnetic wavelength, but if you can get your brain center frequency down to 3 hertz, which is theta or light sleep stage, then the wavelength will reach the sun where the mentors and that exist. Now, how do you know when you get to that point? Well, if you meditate what I call blank mind style, just, thinking of nothing. And in fact, all the books I've read for self-help with healing, they say your best time to request healing is when you're on that point between awake and asleep. That is when you should put your healing request out, because that's about 3 hertz of mental brainwave frequency that'll set brainwave frequency centered. And so that is the one that's going to go traveling out. But if you are in contact with your mentor, and you can get to that point, then you can ask him questions and get your answers through the dowsing. So the next thing is to contact your mentor. Okay, the mentors, of course, now your mentor may not be assigned solely to you. Mentors may have 3 or 4 people in incarnation that they are working with. So don't consider yourself to be, but if you can ask your mentor and get some kind of a response, whether it's a gut feeling, an intuitive thought in your mind, or pendulum work, and where you can do that, then you can make contact and you can start building a communication between you. And once you get communication with him, like I say, he goes into the greater company of high selves. And I put this in here, this quote from Isaiah, "So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth, not spoken. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it." So you have to speak aloud. Okay, and you can ask your mentor's name, it'll be gibberish. Or you can tell him, I'm going to call you Sam. And he'd be perfectly all right with it. Sylvia Brown's mentor, of course, she was clairvoyant. She could see her mentor. I forget what name she gave to her mentor. It was a female mentor in that case. But she wanted to call her that name, and so that's fine, Okay, then identify your patient. And this word is spoken for the entity known as, in this case, John Smith. Right? Well, this introduces your patient not only to your mentor, who I'm sure is familiar with him already, but also to the great company of high selves. So he's written into the big book up there as being a person in need. And then initiate the treatment. All right. There's some question, and it was just yesterday I finally got to, in order to Tao's appropriately, your question must be accurate. Okay. You cannot say, well, maybe do this, You have to say something definite and accurate. And, okay, one way of doing it would be, and this would be, for example, for a beginning healer, John Smith's flesh and blood, so-and-so, is in need of repair. I formally request that these repairs begin immediately and be completed in a timely manner, make it so. That's one way to do it, but you have to have what would in medieval times be called a spell. In order to gain access to the big computer in the sky, which is what we've been talking about, you have to put your request in properly. And that is the thing. So, Yesterday, I says, okay, I can do it this way. I can say, I request, or I order, or I want this, and so on and so forth. And, you know, to solidify how to say this, because the better you say it, the better the result will be. So I says, okay, Christ was walking around 2,000 years ago. What did he say? You know, because the Bible doesn't tell us everything, obviously. And I said, did he request, or did he do this or that? And it turns out when Christ walked around, his best spell making was "I want." That was his basic thing. I want this person so and so to be good, or whatever he's doing. So, and this is something which showed up in Serge King's book on Healing for the Millions. And I passed out sheets of that before, what he calls the dynamite method. But even Serge King, who was Kahuna, in the Huna religion, even he, as far as I can determine, never mentions the assistance of the spirit doctors. So that's unfortunate, because that's the only way that the healing will do. So anyway, that's what we do, and invariably you have to work by system. If a person has a bad liver, you do the entire gastrointestinal system, because that's all on one chip. And you do if it's cardio problems, you do the entire cardio system. If it's joints, you do every joint. See, I want the joint system to be repaired. So anyway, then continuing treatment. Now this is problematical, not continuing the treatment, but what do you do after the person's original symptom goes away? Well, first of all, what do you do if it doesn't go away? Well, if you want to do Sherlock Holmes, you take out the other side of that sheet, which we went through the entity, and you start looking for where the glitch is that's upsetting them. And it may be karma, which is still operational, it's not obsolete anymore, so you can't erase that. You can't delete that. Is he still in the middle of his life plan, and it's still functioning and keeping him going, then you can't do that. But the vast majority of disease conditions we have today will not be karma or life plan. They will not be that. So they are due to things that happen in the environment to you, or things that come to you from past lives which need to be resolved. And believe me, there's a bunch of those. So then you have to do your detective work, or you can try on page 31. Do the entire vehicle, do a treatment for the entire vehicle. Now this is what Joel Goldsmith did, but he did it by visualization. He visualized the patients in perfect health. I don't know how he did that, but again, he was able to do this because the mentors can see, and his visualizations must have been strong enough that they could see what he wanted. So he didn't speak, he didn't deliver a spell, but he created a picture in his mind of what he wanted, and that was how he was so successful in this healing. Most of us can't do that. I can't do that. So, but see, now this book is supposed to be for the beginner. So I needed, that's why chapter 7 was so hard to write, because you would like to help your people as much as you can. You know? And where do you stop? Well, okay, let's say a guy comes to you and he says, I have cancer of the so-and-so. Okay, and all right. So you say, okay, well, and you give him treatments, and the cancer is cleared up by simple treatments like this. And then when he's all through, well, you'd probably say, well, I have some arthritis, but that's all right. The cancer's gone. I can live with the arthritis. See? So you can go down the line and treat for every little nook and cranny to make it as good as possible. So, any questions at this point? Yes or no? Okay. Now, one final point here. At the bottom of page 31, and do not be discouraged if the healing seems unsuccessful. The spirit doctors working with you will do all they can, but in the end, destiny always trumps healing. If it is your destiny to experience this, for whatever reason, then it's going to continue on until the reason for it is used up. Okay, that pretty much finishes what I wanted to say. So, is there anything you'd like to know that I haven't quite cleared up? No? Okay, no, very good. So, let's call it quits. Goodbye and good night.
Farewell.
Okay.